Good morning and peace be upon you, one and all. Thank you very much to Her Excellency Ambassador Pictet for offering me this opportunity to be with you today. I wish I could be with you for longer and be with you in person, but I'm deeply honored to have this opportunity to address you as you discuss the role of religion and FBOs and faith-based organizations in peace building. My name is Azza Karam, and I serve as the Secretary General of Religions for Peace. For those of you who will not know Religions for Peace, it is a 50-year-old, multi-religious, international, non-governmental organization headquartered in New York with 96 affiliate interreligious councils or multi-religious platforms around the world. Like the United Nations with its membership of governments or states, Religions for Peace has a membership of religious institutions from around the world and religious communities from around the world, including indigenous peoples. We take a great deal of pride and a sense of responsibility in the mission of Religions for Peace, which has traditionally been and will continue to be bringing together religious leaders representing their institutions and communities, including women and youth, to work together practically on concrete programs and initiatives that deliver to communities around the world. In other words, the mission of Religions for Peace, like that of the United Nations, is to convene those who speak on behalf of their communities in order to work together to deliver together for the common good. That is why, depending on the country, our national and regional interreligious councils are often involved in a range of advocacy, building of capacities, actual service delivery on anything from the Sustainable Development Agenda, health, nutrition, sanitation, education, but also humanitarian relief work, which unfortunately today is a defining feature of the work we do. Excuse me. Excuse me. It's not COVID. In addition, it is also true that our multi-religious or interreligious councils and platforms in different countries are very strong advocates for human rights of their communities, because that defines the common good. And because they are also very strong, because of that, they're also very much engaged in mediation and negotiation of conflicts and disputes as they arise. So, in other words, the Religions for Peace infrastructure of religious leaders and institutions working together is the space where the multi-religious peace building, both in terms of delivering to people so that they are not in need and their dignity is dignified, but also in terms of actually intervening and being able to bring communities together around the common good and preempt, prevent, or resolve conflicts before they happen, preferably, but as they happen as well. This is Religions for Peace's work, and it has been doing this for 50 years. I do need to clarify one thing, however. Apart from the very wide definition of peace building that we have, so it is not merely the absence of conflict and the attempt to resolve or mediate it, but it is also taking into account the myriad forms of human existence that require to be dignified such that the need for conflict would not arise in the first place. This broad definition of peacemaking and peace building is something that unfortunately we find hard to accept or to mainstream. Traditionally, peace building or peacemaking is reserved to the mediation and negotiation around actual ongoing conflicts. This is exceedingly important. This cannot be diminished, but we have to understand that religions and religious institutions in general, as the traditional community-based infrastructures for governance and for the upholding of rights and responsibilities of communities, that these this massive myriad network of existence, which is the realms of religion and religious engagement, are not only coming into use, if you will, around conflicts and the mediation thereof. But in fact, the role of the religious infrastructure in most societies around the world is already very permanent, from the very ABC that we learn in the educational contexts, all the way through to employment, to the labor market in general, to the political spaces. So the role of religious institutions and religious communities is possible in myriad ways to ensure and to render sustainable the building of resilience in communities, from making sure that no one goes hungry to making sure that a conflict can be resolved. That in that entirety of human experience and human need is what religious organizations and actors are traditionally committed to. We have known religious institutions before we have heard of governments, political parties, ministries, non-governmental organizations. Our normal in most societies around the world, if not in all societies around the world, our normal is the religious institutions and their myriad infrastructure and the myriad representatives that are there. That is the world of development, human rights, and peace and security, traditionally served through these very, very ancient institutions, which have predated, therefore, the Westphalian infrastructures as we know them today, but they will also long outlive those institutions. So, two things that have to be uppermost in our mind when we think of the role of religion and FBOs in peace building. A is to understand peace building as the continuum of needs that human beings have, from the basic needs of shelter, food, water, etc., all the way to the actual functioning and oiling of the mechanisms of governance and service provision and conflict in any context. And the second is to understand and appreciate that religious institutions are and will be the original infrastructure that humanity has invented to look after itself. And therefore, with those two realities in mind, we understand that the work of Religions for Peace, as the work of the United Nations, is inseparable. The work of multi-religious coordination is inseparable from the work of governance and human rights, and therefore peace and security. Now, that is conceptually, based on practice, the case. What has Religions for Peace actually been able to see through its interreligious councils and to support through its 96 interreligious councils around the world? Effectively, whether we're speaking about the context of a country like Myanmar, where thanks to Religions for Peace's engagement, because Religions for Peace is the religious institutions in a country like Myanmar, and religious communities and the representatives of it form an interreligious council of Myanmar, because that is the structure of this particular entity called Religions for Peace, or the Interreligious Council in Myanmar. This has become a hub that can provide a convening space for the political parties, for the political protagonists who were not necessarily in parties, for the military and defense establishment representatives to come together with the religious leaders and institutions. It is an incredible, unique kind of a space and a gathering and a convening. Of course, they can come together under the auspices of the United Nations too. But usually, this particular kind of gathering that is truly multi-stakeholders is very much something that the multi-religious institutions and establishments engender. COVID is teaching us all a remarkable lesson about peace building and peacemaking. It is teaching us that whereas religious institutions are at the forefront because they are the first responders in humanitarian crisis, whereas they are definitely at the forefront of serving all communities, they are not necessarily adept at working together. That is why multi-religious collaboration is no longer an option or a luxury to be considered. It is an absolute necessity. What Religions for Peace does and insists on and is built to serve is the convening of multi-religious capabilities and capacities. And quite frankly, when that convening takes place on a systematic basis, peace building is but one of the myriad opportunities for healing and resilience and advancement that we can possibly countenance. We know that multi-religious collaboration is the tipping point for peace. In times of so-called security, which have not been around for a long time, but very much also in times of insecurity. We are living in such times today. Therefore, they are an opportunity for all of us. Religions for Peace and multi-religious collaboration has to be the option in which we work. The United Nations and other international actors need to acknowledge that multi-religious collaboration is a requirement for multilateral peace building. And that is what we are working towards showing, not towards creating. It's been happening for 50 years, but towards showing and enabling through the partnerships that we have and that we aim to build with all of you. The very best of fortune and good luck, and peace and good health in your deliberations. Thank you.